Hey guys, I'm Trace. I'm one of the technicians here at Eurofed. I'm at the Duluth location. This is my 2020 Audi RS3. We just installed a APR DTR8863 I believe, on it, and I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. I've always been an Audi guy. I took a few years off and bought some Camaros and had fun with those at the track, and decided I wanted something a little bit more fun as a daily driver, sort of. Just something that I could drive more often, you know, that was a little bit better for just street driving, you know, with the occasional track use. And these finally came down in price, that it was, you know, attainable for me. And I always knew you could make huge power on these. I always knew they were fairly reliable. And, you know, from what I've seen and heard, they handle decently well with the right mods. And so that kind of, it basically just checked off all the stuff that I wanted, which was, you know, fun car on the street and, you know, mostly fun car at the track. I know I'm not going to be breaking any records with this thing, but it was still a lot of fun when I did take it. So basically I bought the car bone stock. It was a one owner Georgia car. Bone stock. I did find out the guy had wheels on it at some point, but other than that, there was nothing. First day I got it, drove it back to the shop, APR Stage 1, 93 and E85 tune. And the nice thing is you can map switch on these. So I was able to flash a 93 and an E85 file on there, run out the 93, go to the gas station, put E85, switch it while I'm there. After that, it was, I did a few suspension things. I'll try not to just list them all off, but, you know, like rear sway bar, lowering springs, camber mounts, various, you know, diff inserts, dog bone inserts. And then I got some Apex wheels for it and some 200 treadwear tires. You know, that kind of covers most of the like fun track day stuff. Fairly simple, kept the mag ride on it. Going into the engine stuff, after that I did a APR intake and an inlet and an APR intercooler. Switched it to the Stage 1 Plus file from APR, fully 85, and that was a pretty noticeable difference. That was a lot of fun. That was like great street power, like very, very daily driver usable. Recently, you know, saw their new turbo that came out, and it's kind of, once you put some power in these, you always want like a little more and a little more, and this turbo just checked all the boxes off. It was, you know, stock downpipe, stock fueling, not a built motor, like you keep everything, you know, and I already had the supporting mods, the intake, the inlet, and the intercooler. So it was basically just a complete drop-in, bolt-in turbo, and you change the tune on it, and, you know, it's ready to rip. 599 wheel. So I have taken it out on the track one time so far, and that was back on stock turbo. I did a 138.73 at Road Atlanta, which is not too bad for this car. Definitely some improvements. The car was faster than the brakes wanted it to be. I was on stock front rotors with some Hawk DTC60 pads, and definitely the car was not having a good time, to the point where, you know, I didn't want to stay in it all the way through the back straight and get on the brakes, but I have put gyro disc rotors on it, and I switched up the pads. I went with some EBCs and see if maybe that, you know, helps with the braking issues. But I'm thinking with the new turbo and the new brake setup, you know, I'd like to get into the 36s-ish. You know, the turbo, I don't know how much it'll help because I'm just gonna have to slow down sooner, but it was a lot of fun on the track, you know, getting some of the big dog cars, you know, they'd catch up to me in the turns really quick, and then we'd get on the back straight, and, you know, it was pretty easy to reel them in. Overall, it was, you know, a lot of people complain about understeer, Audi steer is what everybody says. And you know, with the few mods that I did on this, I didn't really notice it like all that bad. You know, once the tires got super hot, you know, you're really trying to get into it, you get on the power early, it would start to, you know, push a little bit. But I'm also on the cheapest 200 treadwear tires you can get. So I think there's some improvement in just the tires I could get out of it and just getting used to the car. I've only done one weekend. I'm hoping to do another weekend actually coming up in a few days. If I get on the list, I'm on the waiting list, but it should be pretty fun. I'd like to see what I can do now. So as far as the installation goes of the turbo, it's fairly straightforward. You know, some of the stuff is a little bit of a pain in the butt. You know, just you're working in a tight space, and it's, you know, 5-cylinder on GTIs. You got a 4-cylinder, a lot easier to get turbo stuff back there. I mean, it's essentially a bolt-on kit. You know, you pull the old turbo out, you swap over the lines, put the new turbo in, and bolt everything back up. You know, having the giant inlet that APR makes, it was a little difficult to get it down in there, and you know, some of the bolts are not the most fun, but overall not too bad. Just about a day install. You know, you basically pull off a lot of the stuff on the top, give you, you know, some extra room, like the cam solenoids on the back of the motor, pull the intake inlet, pop the downpipe off, and then that pretty much gets out of your way. And then you basically just unbolt the lines, the oil coolant lines from the block. And then after quite a bit finagling, you can get it out the top. You know, there's just enough room to get it out, but there is room. After that, you basically put it on a table, swap the oil coolant lines over, and you finagle it back into the car, and basically just go backwards. Once it's in, you know, APR provides you a authorization code to flash it to the newest software, and it is free if you have an APR tune previously. It's free to upgrade. They also do include a TCU tune, also free if you had a TCU tune before, which I did. You just plug the computer in, you flash it. It's fairly simple. And I will say the TCU tune with the new turbo setup made quite a big difference. It definitely sped up the shifts, sped up the downshifts. One thing that's kind of neat, it also increases the rev limiter all the way up to 8. So that was kind of cool, seeing basically no red line on the gauge cluster. But yet, I mean, overall, you know, especially for a shop, a very straightforward install, you know, nothing any Eurofed can't handle. So back to when, you know, thinking about when I bought the car, I wanted something more streetable. To be honest, when I bought it, I never really thought that I would upgrade the turbo, because I saw 500 and I think they claim 17 horsepower for it on Stage 1 Plus, and I was like, I'm not going to need any more than that. And you know, sure enough, slippery slope. You start looking at the turbos, and you know, I didn't really want to have to pull my turbo and get it sent out and rebuilt. And you know, I didn't want to change it back into something I didn't want to drive often, because it was, you know, too much of a race car, or you know, too much for the street. You know, was a little iffy about getting you know, a bigger turbo in general in the first place. Very happy with how it turned out. Streetability, the only thing you really notice is like the torque comes in a little bit later than on stock turbo, which is to be expected. But man, it pulls like a freight train up top. And you know, if you want it to calm down, you just put it in comfort mode and drive, and it drives like an A3. And you put it in sport, and you can kind of do whatever you want. And then transmission's lightning fast, and it again just pulls up top like crazy, like it didn't before. So overall, my experience with the turbo in the car has just been fantastic. Again, super simple, no built motor, no upgraded fueling, no catalyst downpipe. I can still pass emissions, which is nice. Overall, it's just been great, and I'm excited to unfortunately throw more money at it in the near future.